In the summer of 1944, a woman is bicycling through occupied France in the middle of the night. She has been on the bicycle for 2 days. Her thighs, where they rub against the seat, are no longer skin. They are open wounds that have bled through her trousers and dried and bled again. She cannot stand without crying out. So she does not stand. She keeps pedaling. In the saddlebag, wrapped in oilcloth, are wireless codes. Without those codes, 7,000 resistance fighters in the mountains behind her have no way to call London. No way to call for weapons. No way to call for help. The codes were lost 3 days ago in a German attack, and she is the one who volunteered to ride for them. She has another 200 kilometers to go. She passes a German checkpoint at a crossroads at 4 in the morning. The sentry waves her through. He sees a tired woman on a bicycle. He does not see the most wanted person on the Gestapo's list for the entire south of France. He does not see the woman they have nicknamed the White Mouse. Her name is Nancy Wake. She is 31 years old. She is from Wellington, New Zealand, and Sydney, Australia, by way of London, Paris, and Marseille. And the Gestapo has a 5 million franc bounty on her head. To understand how an Australian woman ended up bicycling for the French resistance, you have to go back to a house in Sydney in the 1920s. Nancy Wake was the youngest of 6 children. Her family had moved from Wellington to Australia when she was small. Her father left them when she was 4. Her mother was strict and unhappy and quick with a hand. Nancy hated the house. At 16, she ran away. She worked as a nurse in the Australian countryside. She slept in boarding houses. She saved every shilling she could. She wanted out of New South Wales, out of Australia, out of the life that had been chosen for her. In 1932, an aunt in New Zealand died and left her £200. It was enough money for one ticket to anywhere. Nancy bought a ticket to London. In London, she taught herself shorthand. She talked her way into a job as a freelance journalist for the Hearst newspapers. She moved to Paris. She wrote about cafe culture and politics and the rising temperature of Europe. In the spring of 1933, Hearst sent her to Vienna. She watched the Nazi rallies from a hotel balcony. She watched the parades and the torches and the slow tightening of a society around a single idea. And one morning, in a street in Vienna, she watched a group of SA men whip a row of Jewish men who had been tied to a wheel in the public square. She would later say it was the moment her life changed. She said it plainly, the way she said most things. I knew then that one day I would have to do something about it. She went back to Paris. In 1939, she married a French industrialist named Henri Fiacre. He was wealthy. He was charming. He adored her. They settled in Marseille in a large apartment overlooking the sea. She was 26 years old, and she had what looked like the life she had been chasing since she was 16. It lasted 11 months. In May of 1940, German tanks crossed into France. By June, Paris was under occupation. By the autumn, the southern half of the country, where Nancy lived, was the rump state called Vichy, and the Gestapo was beginning to operate openly in its streets. Henri Fiacre looked at his wife. He understood, before she said it, what she was going to do. She joined an escape network. The network moved Allied airmen, pilots who had been shot down over France, south through the country across the Pyrenees into neutral Spain. Nancy was the courier. She used her husband's money, her social position, her Hearst press credentials, and her American-accented French to move men and forged papers through territory that was becoming more dangerous by the week. She did it for 3 years. The Gestapo, by 1943, knew there was someone in southern France running airmen. They did not know who. Every time they raided an apartment, the woman was gone. Every time they set a trap, she slipped through it. They began to call her, in their internal communications, Die Weiße Maus, the White Mouse, because they could see the holes in their net, but not the animal moving through them. By the summer of 1943, they had a bounty on her head of 5 million francs. In today's money, somewhere near $25 million. It was one of the largest bounties of the war. She did not know that. She knew the apartment in Marseille was being watched. She knew her name was on a list. She knew the network was collapsing around her, one safe house at a time. Henri told her to run. She told him she would not leave him. He told her she had to. They had a single conversation about it, in the apartment overlooking the sea, on an afternoon in the autumn of 1943. He said the words she did not want to hear. He said, "If you stay, they will catch us both. If you go, one of us has a chance." She went. She crossed the Pyrenees on foot in the winter of 1943. The same mountains, the same snow, the same path that Virginia Hall had crossed the year before. Took her 6 attempts. 5 times she was turned back. The 6th time she made it to Spain. She reached London in the summer of 1943. She presented herself at the offices of the Special Operations Executive SOE, the British Agency for Sabotage and Resistance Work in occupied Europe. She told them what she had been doing for 3 years. They believed her. They signed her up. They put her through unarmed combat training. They taught her how to plant plastic explosives on a railway bridge. They taught her how to fall out of an airplane in the dark. She finished at the top of her class. She did not know, in any of those months in London, that Henri Fiacca had been arrested by the Gestapo within weeks of her departure. She did not know that he had been tortured. She did not know that he had refused, under torture, to tell them where his wife had gone. She did not know that he had been executed. She would not know any of it until the war was over. On the night of April 29, 1944, she parachuted into the Auvergne Mountains in central France. She landed in a tree. The branches held her. She hung there, suspended in the dark, while the rest of her stick came down around her. A French resistance commander named Henri Tardivat walked over to her, looked up and said in heavily accented English, "I hope all trees grow such beautiful fruit this year." Nancy Wake, hanging in the tree, in a parachute harness, in occupied France, 20 miles from the nearest German garrison, looked down at him. "Don't give me," she said, "that French shit." He cut her down. They were friends for the rest of her life. She took command of approximately 7,000 maquisards, French resistance fighters operating across the Massif Central. She was, on paper, a liaison officer for SOE. In practice, she ran them. She organized parachute drops of weapons. She trained farmers and railwaymen and teenage boys to fight. She received the codes from London, decrypted them, and turned them into orders. She led raids. On one of them, a raid on a German arms factory near Montmouchet, a German sentry surprised her party at close quarters. There was no time for a rifle. She killed him with her hands with a single judo strike to the throat. She would speak about it, in interviews decades later, with the calm of a woman who had done what was necessary and did not pretend otherwise. In June of 1944, during a German counterattack on her area, the Maquis radio operator's codebooks were destroyed and his wireless damaged. Without codes, the 7,000 fighters in the mountains were cut off from London. Someone had to ride to the nearest functioning wireless. The nearest one was 500 kilometers away, through occupied territory. Nancy got on a bicycle. She rode for 71 hours. She slept twice in haystacks, for less than an hour each time. She passed through German checkpoints. She talked her way past sentries. She kept the codes wrapped in oilcloth in her saddlebag. When she came back, her thighs had been scraped raw and were bleeding through her clothes. She could not walk for days. She handed the codes to the wireless operator and lay down on the floor and slept. She would say later of that ride only that it hurt. When France was liberated, she came down out of the mountains. She went looking for Henri. She did not find him. She found instead a neighbor, an old friend, a member of the building staff. They told her, one after another, what had happened in October of 1943. They told her about the Gestapo at the door, about the cellars in Marseille, about the morning he had been taken out and shot. She was 31 years old. She sat down on the floor of the apartment overlooking the sea, and she did not get up for a long time. She would say, in every interview for the next 67 years, that he had died because of her. The historians would tell her it was not so simple. She did not believe them. The British gave her the George Medal. The French gave her the Médaille de la Résistance and 3 Croix de Guerre. The Americans gave her the Medal of Freedom. Australia, decades later, made her a companion of the Order of Australia. She lived in London after the war. She worked on and off for the British Air Ministry. She drank gin. She did not settle. She married again, late, a man named John Forward, an RAF officer who had loved her quietly for years. She outlived him too. She lived to 98. She died in London in 2011. Her ashes were carried to France and scattered in the mountains of Verneix, in the Allier, near the ground where she had commanded 7,000 fighters in the summer of 1944. There is a photograph of her, taken late in her life, in a London pub. She is smiling. There is a gin and tonic on the table in front of her. Her eyes are exactly the eyes of the woman who looked down at Tardivat from the tree, and they are exactly the eyes of the woman who said in Vienna in 1933 that one day she would have to do something about it. She did. She turned the grief of one marriage into the freedom of half a country. She made one of the most feared organizations in human history afraid of a ghost they could only describe as a mouse. And when it was finished, she went home and she drank gin and she lived. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. There are many more forgotten heroes of the Second World War, and we will tell their stories one at a time with the care they deserve.